Alright, so let's get to something depressing, which is something called active clubs, which is the latest trend in hate groups. So, definitely something people should be aware of because this country is going more and more insane. Anyway, let's get to the article. In late May, a group of young male neo-Nazis converged outside a bookstore in Bozeman, Montana to protest a drag queen story hour. Because reasons. Later that day, they hit another similar event in Livingston, Montana. The second weekend in June, the groups targeted the Lewis County Pride Festival in Centralia, Washington. A week after that, it was the Wind River Pride event in Lander, Wyoming. And the following weekend, they were at Orange City Pride, not far from Portland, Oregon. I see a pattern here. These men, dressed in tactical gear and masks, not frightening at all, were members of so-called active clubs, a term that may be relatively new to American audiences. They are a strand of the white nationalist movement that has grown quickly during the last 3 years and that has recently taken their message of hate into more public view. These decentralized cells emphasize mixed martial arts training to ready their members for violence against their perceived enemies. Yeah, not frightening at all. No, these are just, these are just everyday people just living their lives. Nothing to see here. Stephen Pigott, a researcher with the Western States Center, a national civil rights organization, has closely tracked their evolution in the Pacific Northwest. They are really focused on a couple of things, said Pigott. One is centering, organizing, and trying to recruit people through combat sports, but also preparing for political and racially motivated violence. Yay! Those that protested those LGBTQ gatherings in the Pacific Northwest states call themselves the Northwest Nationalist Network. I love alliteration, but not in this case. They have been among the most emboldened to bring their activities into the streets. But groups in Arizona, California, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee have also been notably active. And recently 2 new networks have been announced. The Dixie Alliance for groups in southern states and the Midwest Network. Damn it, I was hoping we'd get out of that. These clubs are decentralized and they're forming on their own, said Morgan Moon, an investigative researcher at the Anti-Defamation League, which estimates that there are active clubs now in at least 30 states. We're starting to see the active club model pop up in Europe as well as Canada now. Oh, yay. I'm so glad that we're exporters of the best ideas. Ew! Those who have closely tracked the active club scene in the U.S. largely attribute its establishment and growth to a single individual, Robert Rondo. Rondo, a self-professed fascist and white nationalist who frequently traffics in anti-Semitic tropes, has spent much of the last 5 years on the run from law enforcement. Sounds like a great guy. But I have to give him credit. At least he admits he's a fascist and a white nationalist. He isn't afraid to say that he's a horrible piece of shit. That's refreshing, actually, since most people I run into, if you point out how horrible their viewpoints are by using terms like fascist, people tie themselves up in knots trying to prove that they're not what you say they are, even though you actually know what words mean. So I gotta give him credit that that's refreshing. Still is all sorts of you, and I hope law enforcement catches up to him, but at least he's aware. So, In the spring, he was arrested in Romania, and a court recently ordered that he be extradited to face charges in California for rioting and conspiring to riot at political rallies. Well, good. I have to give credit to the Romanians. They've arrested this douche canoe, and they arrested Andrew Tate. They have no fucks to give. They're not going to play this anti-Semitic white nationalist. They're not going to let you get away with being a horrible freaking person. I'm starting to really, really like Romania. Probably because of their past, but maybe that makes them super sensitive to it. But still, definitely like these guys. What Rondo did was take a model of European far-right extremism, decentralized and quite honestly borrowing, if not stealing from far-right football hooligan subcultures, right down to aesthetics and plopping that down into an American context as something new and innovative, said Michael Colborn, a researcher, investigator, and journalist at the investigative journalism website Bellingcat. Colborn's investigations helped to uncover Rondo's whereabouts in Serbia in 2020 and 2021, and then in Bulgaria in 2022. So it's not so active clubs are a European thing. Okay. And yes, hooliganism is a horrible thing that happens amongst, for those of you who aren't aware, football is what we call soccer. So, what Americans call soccer. Let's see here. Rondo's alleged criminal activity in the U.S. dates back chiefly to 2017 and 2018, where he ran an active club in Southern California called the Rise Above Movement. Despite that crew's disillusion and his absence from the U.S. during the last several years, Colborn said Rondo has retained a central role in the growth of the active club scene. Rondo sells merchandising online and uses podcasts to instruct others on starting their own crews. Colborn said Rondo's advice to adherents centers on what he calls the 3 F's: fashion, fitness, and fighting. Alrighty then. He really saw the power of that aesthetic, that power bringing young men together into these hyper-masculine subcultures where they could train up for physical combat against there's two theirs there, and they shouldn't be. Perceived ideological foes, said Colborn. Rondo has also spent his time deepening transatlantic ties with similar-minded hate groups. Colborn said he spotted Rondo at events hosted by ultranationalists in Budapest, Hungary, and Sofia, Bulgaria in early 2020. These gatherings and connections have reinforced a common goal, said Colborn. Now, let me see if there's anything I wanted to... Yep, that certainly sounds like Andrew Tate. Hyper-masculine subcultures. And he prides himself on being physically fit, and he prides himself on his cars and being rich, as if his being rich wasn't, his having all these, cars wasn't a substitute for something. So, yeah, totally sounds like Andrew Tate. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't a part of one of these clubs before he got arrested. It's not explicitly politically focused, he said. It's about building what they perceive as a far-right counterculture movement to try to mainstream their ideas, their ideologies, their symbols, to make them more acceptable in society over time. And there are, unfortunately, a lot of teenage boys who listen to Andrew Tate, and actually preteens, who listen to Andrew Tate and think that this is the way to treat women. So, yeah, it's becoming mainstream, which is frightening because it's just going to keep reinforcing why women don't want to be around these men, and it's just going to make them even more incels, because that's all that these people are doing, is making more incels. The neo-Nazi question. Ugh. Active clubs are not the first instance where a decentralized model of crews for young men committed to becoming white warriors has been exported from Europe to the US. Almost 4 decades ago, the same happened with the neo-Nazi skinhead scene. In fact, Colburn said in some places, like Canada, active clubs had been established by former members of the white supremacist group Hammerskins. Oh, yay. White warriors. That doesn't tell you what they're white nationalists at all. No, not at all. They are trying to cloak the very same neo-Nazi ideas that their neo-Nazi skinhead forebears had with their jackboots and swastika t-shirts, 10, 20, 30 years ago. God, it's been that long? Colborn said Rondo's obsession with the aesthetics of active clubs has steered away from that imaginary imagery because ultimately it didn't play well with American audiences. Plus, it could immediately attract law enforcement scrutiny, particularly in Europe. And yeah, optics has a lot to do with a lot of things, but anyway. In countries where there are some pretty open far-right scenes like Serbia, you cannot display swastikas. You cannot be that obvious. You literally cannot do it in Germany or Austria because it's a crime, said Colburn. Yeah. They have a very good reason why not to. I question whether it should be illegal, but I understand why it is. I wouldn't be surprised if these dipshits are Holocaust denialists as well. It wouldn't surprise me. Rondo was very familiar with how far-right extremists across Europe had to be more clever and coy with the way they were trying to communicate their ideas, and the way that they would try to spread their ideology. Despite that, groups that have formed in the U.S. have taken their own approach on whether or not to openly embrace neo-Nazism. The praise of National Socialist tenets and all of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime is very apparent, said Piggott. If you look at their social media, it's full of pro-Nazi, pro-Hitler rhetoric and their iconography. Oh my lord. Iconography. Why can I not say that word? Iconography. Oh my lord. Iconography. Oh my god. What is wrong with me? At an anti-LGBTQ gathering, at LGBTQ plus gatherings during the last 2 months, active clubs in the U.S. have allied with other white nationalist organizations. Among those are Patriot Front, which saw 31 members arrested and charged with conspiring to riot at a pride event in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho last summer. Also, White Lives Matter groups, I'm going to need another shower after this, have reportedly attended fight nights hosted by active clubs in San Diego and in Washington state. But not all far-right groups have welcomed the increased public activity of these crews. A viral video taken near the Oregon City Pride event last month showed Proud Boys, a violent neo-fascist group, meeting members of an active club on a sidewalk. I'm sorry, I find that hilarious. In the video, Proud Boys are heard calling the active group members racists and Nazis. How bad do you have to be to get the Proud Boys to do that? Oh my god. Because the Proud Boys aren't racist? Aren't Nazis? Wow, how extreme are these groups? Either that or the Proud Boys are really, really unaware of their own ideas. I'm not sure. The fight, which has been attributed to an interpersonal conflict between the groups, has opened up hostilities between the two extremist factions, mostly online. Extremism experts caution that there is little comfort to take from seeing two far-right groups in conflict with each other. Why not? In this case, both have shown up in furtherance of the same cause, to intimidate members of the LGBTQ community at a pride event. And the fact that both were there may signal a common perception that this moment in America, when anti-LGBTQ hostility is heightened, may be an opportunity to spread their extreme ideologies. Okay, none of that explains why we shouldn't be cheering on when the Proud Boys and one of these active clubs decide to beat the snot out of each other. I fail to see how that's I mean, granted, they also are doing horrible things. Do not get me wrong. They should not be attacking these communities. But if they want to, get distracted and beat the snot out of each other and leave the innocent people alone, I'm fine with that. No problem whatsoever. Anyway, so that is the end of that article. So just thought you should know that this is a thing, because we should always be cognizant of what's happening with these extreme groups, because who knows, someone might accidentally fall into this because they're not aware that starting off maybe innocuously, like wanting to learn martial arts, could lead them down this road. I don't know how they go about it. Whether they started off as innocent, that, oh, we're just, a martial arts club or whatever, and then suddenly they start trying to radicalize you. Well, you'll know to stay away from these clubs before you even attempt. Go to a more mainstream dojo instead of these active clubs. But anyway, I will leave it at that, and I will see you guys in the next video.